The story I have for you today is a story that I made up myself. At least I put the parts together. The parts were suggested to me by some bits I found in traditional stories. And I put this together so that you would have a story that you could tell and also make something for the holiday season. Because this is the time of year when we decorate houses and rooms and trees and packages, and it's nice to be able to make some decorations yourself. I call this story the story of Paper Flower, and this is how it goes. Long, long time ago, there was a family with many, many children living on a very small farm. The children did everything they could to help with the work so that they could raise enough food for everybody to eat. But it was hard because there were so many of them. And one day, the oldest one of the children, a girl whose name was Plum Blossom. That's a very pretty name because the plum tree blooms early in the spring when everything is bare. I guess that's when she was born. But Plum Blossom came to her parents and said, "Mama and Papa, I'm almost 14 years old. I'm a big girl, and I think my brothers and sisters are getting big enough that they can do a lot of the work on the farm that I can do. So you don't really need me. And if I could go away and earn my own living, you wouldn't have to feed as many kids." And they said, "Oh, Plum Blossom, you're so young. Where could you find work?" And she said, "Well, I think if I go into the big city, I can find something to do." They said, "Well, mm, be careful and promise you'll come home for the holidays." So she promised, and she went into the city and she looked for a job. But they said, "You're just a farm girl. You know how to take care of pigs and you know how to dig in the dirt. We don't need that here in the city." But finally, she found a rich family with some spoiled kids. And they were looking for a big girl to take care of the kids and to pick up after the kids and to do all the things around the house that those spoiled kids never did. Now, I'm sure in your family, you do things to help, like maybe you set the table for meals or clear away the table. Maybe you walk the dog or feed the cat. And I'm sure you pick up your dirty laundry and maybe pick up around the house too. But these kids were so spoiled, they never did anything. They just dropped their dirty socks on the floor. We'll let Plum Blossom pick them up. Or they left their dirty dishes on the table. We'll let her pick them up. Actually, they decided Plum Blossom was too pretty a name for someone who just picked up all the dirty stuff. They decided since she was a farm girl, they would call her Mud Pig. "Mud Pig, pick up my socks. Mud Pig, clear the table. Wash the dishes." It wasn't a very good job, but it was the only one she could find. At the end of a week, she went to the lady who was her boss and said, "Will you pay me now? Maybe I'll look for a different job." And they said, "Mud Pig, you can't find another job in the city. Just you stay here. And we don't have to pay you because we give you a place to live, a place to sleep, clothes to wear, food to eat. We're taking care of you. We'll pay you when your job is done." She said, "Well, all right, I'll stay until the holidays, but I promised my family I would go home for the holidays." Okay. So that's how it was. Even though it turned out she didn't have a room of her own, they just let her sleep on the floor in the kitchen. They didn't give her new clothes. They gave her worn out clothes nobody wanted. They didn't let her eat at the table with them. They let her eat the scraps and leftovers. It was a rotten job, especially with those spoiled kid Mud Pig. Yuck. Well, when the holidays finally came, she was eager to go home. She went to the boss lady and said, "All right, now pay me. You said I could go home when my job was done." And the lady thought, oh, I don't want her to leave now. There's so much more work to do with the holidays. We have to clean and decorate and make special food. And how can I keep her around? And that lady thought of a really mean trick. She said, all right, Mudpig, you can go home when you do just 3 more little jobs for us. We want you to bring us fire wrapped in a piece of paper. Now, could you wrap fire with a piece of paper? Water wrapped in a piece of paper, and wind wrapped in a piece of paper. If you do that, we'll pay you and let you go home for the holidays. Well, Mudpig recognized that it was a trick, but Mudpig was clever, and Mudpig knew some things that she remembered from when she was at home babysitting with her big brothers and sisters. They would sometimes find some paper that was printed on one side but not on the other side, and they would cut it into squares and they would make things out of it. For instance, you take one piece of paper, fold it in half, and on the open side you can kind of fold down an edge to remind you how far to go. Then you use scissors and cut big fringes like this. And when you open it and curl it around, I have some tape handy, you can make it look like a paper lantern. See? And you could put a bottom in it, you could put a top in it, and if you were really, really careful, I think you could put a candle in it, but the candle wouldn't touch the sides. So you could carry fire in a piece of paper. She took another square of paper and she folded it into a triangle. And then she folded one side up. See, this is straight across like that. And the other side up. Yeah. Then she made a paper cup, and it will hold water for a little while until the paper gets soggy. It really will hold water. Water wrapped in a piece of paper. Then she took another piece, folded it across. You call this a hamburger fold. And began to pleat it back and forth. Well, when she had made these things, she went to the boss lady and said, all right, I have finished the last 3 jobs. And the boss lady thought, impossible! That's not possible. She couldn't do that. But Mudpig brought the lantern, fire wrapped in a piece of paper, and she brought the paper cup, water in a piece of paper, and she brought the fan. And the boss lady said, all right, Mudpig, I see the fire and I see the water, but where's the wind? And Mudpig said, it's in here. You have to shake it to make the wind come out. So it was wind in a piece of paper. And the boss lady was so angry, but she had to pay Mudpig, gave her all that pay from all those weeks of work. And Mudpig took the money and she went back home to her family. And they were so happy to see her. And they said, "Oh my, how did you like life in the city?" And she said, "Well, it wasn't very nice." And she told them about those spoiled children who never did anything for themselves. They never did any chores. They never helped. And her sisters and brothers said, "Well, we know lots of things to do in the house." And Mud Pig said, "Yes, I'm glad that you do." And she told about how she had had to make those things out of paper in order to solve the trick that the mean boss lady gave her. And they said, "Well, are you going to go back?" And she said, "Well, no, I don't like the way they call me Mud Pig instead of Plum Blossom. I think that's mean." And she said, "But I have an idea. Those city people, apparently they don't know about making paper lanterns. And they don't know about paper cups and fans. I could go into business for myself." So when the holidays were over, she went back to the city and she made baskets full of paper things. And she went around the street and sold them and got so much money. Soon she got a horse and wagon with wagon loads of things to sell. And she got so much money, she got a shop and she got her older brother and sister to come and help her. And she got so famous for all of the paper things that she made. People began to say, "Well, she's a famous businessman and she has so many good ideas. Why is she called Mud Pig or even Plum Blossom?" And she changed her name to Paper Flower. So that's the story of Paper Flower. And the story is illustrated by making things out of paper. And you remember how the story starts, where she was just the oldest daughter on the farm with the brothers and sisters and decided that she could help by leaving so that they wouldn't have to feed so many and she could take care of herself. And they made a promise to come home for the holidays. And when she found that job looking after those nasty, spoiled children, boy, when you tell that story, you can tell all the things that you know a kid can do to help around the house, but these spoiled kids didn't do anything. And worse, they called Plum Blossom, they called her Mud Pig instead. That was nasty. And they gave her rags to wear and scraps to eat and sleep on the floor. And yeah, it's pretty awful. And wouldn't let her go home until all her jobs were done for the holidays. And when the holidays came, the boss lady tried to trick her into staying by giving her 3 impossible things. But she made things out of paper to solve those. I'm going to show you. I've got some. The paper I used was squares of just, like school paper that's printed on one side but not on the other. So you can keep it, you can recycle it, or you can reuse it by using the other side. But also, in the newspaper or in the mail, you get these colorful flyers that advertise all kinds of stuff. And that makes an even more colorful thing. So let's see. Remember to make the lantern. You fold it in half. Now I like to fold down the top edge so I don't cut all the way across. I don't want to cut it off. And then you just cut big chomps. And you see, when you curl that around, you can make a lantern, and it's all colorful, and it's colorful inside too. See, you can make other things with this too, kind of. Curl it around and this is sloppy paper, make a sort of a flower, all kinds of things. So that's one. And then remember how to make the paper cup. Mr. Cawthon knows how to do all these things, but you just fold a triangle and then you fold up one side and fold up the other side. And you can fold this side down to hold it open. And it makes a cup, but it also looks like a bell. You could make a bell that you could use to decorate a tree or a package if you turn it upside down. Then another one that I made was a fan, and that's just from folding it back and forth and back and forth. And you can do lots of, put that down, it's easier to fold. But the fan is useful because depending on where you hold it, it takes a different shape. I'll show you. If you hold it at one side, it looks like a fan, or it could be the skirt of a paper figure, or if you squash it in the middle, it looks like a bow tie, or a hair bow you can make out of paper. And then the last thing that I made was the paper flower. Now this, you fold it in half and in half again. That gives you 4 layers. And then if you have really sharp scissors, you can fold it again, and that makes 8 layers. And one side is open edges. That's the edge you want to cut, and you want to leave the folded edge uncut so it'll stay together. And this time, instead of big fat fringes, you make little skinny fringes so that they'll be very fluffy. If you make this out of tissue paper, white tissue paper would look like a snowball. Red tissue paper might look like a flower. You can do lots of things with this. So after you have all this fringe, then you roll it up. Put a little bit of tape to hold it, and fluff it. A flower. And you can make snowballs and things like that to put on packages and put on trees. Years and years ago, when I was telling stories to the 2nd grade at Wayside School, I told them this story. That year, there was a contest in Bartlesville to decorate Christmas trees. And Mrs. Wood's class at Wayside decorated a Christmas tree all with those paper things made out of wrapping paper, bright red and green and silver and gold. And they won $100. That was really impressive. But you can decorate whatever you like.